Hello guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Boho Jewel. I'm Sandra, and today I'm going to talk about taxes. Yay, taxes! Said nobody ever in the history of time, right? Except for maybe the people collecting the taxes, I guess. But if you're a handmade business owner, you need a system in place to make sure that you're keeping track of all your paperwork throughout the year so that when tax time does roll around, you're not stressing out and you're not wondering where all your receipts are for what you can actually deduct, and you're not pulling out a great big shoebox full of receipts for your tax person to go through, right? Because nobody wants that kind of stress. So I'm going to share with you today my system of keeping folders and what folders I have and how I label them that I keep throughout the entire year. And it's worked really well for me for the several years that I've been in business with my handmade business, and my tax people always love me because everything is exactly where it needs to be, and if they have a question, I know where to look and answer it quickly. I get my totals totaled up very quickly right at the end of December, the very beginning of the new year, so that I can reset my folders and get ready for the following year. No fuss, no muss. Now, a couple of disclaimers that I'm going to throw in here. I am not officially a CPA, an accountant, and a tax preparer, nothing like that. But I am going to share with you what works for me, and I think it can work for your handmade business as well. So I initially learned this system, a version of this system, from someone that was a tax preparer and that had her own direct sales business. So it was a great system that translated well into a handmade business. Now, the other disclaimer that I want to add is that you need to find out your state rules for taxes, your tax percentages in your state and in your local county, because it varies from state to state. There's also, of course, then federal, which all of this system, if you have it all in place, that's when you take it to wherever you go. I go to H&R Block just because that's where I've always gone, but you take it to my guy at H&R Block. He knows where to put things in and how to enter things, and we're good to go. No fuss, no muss. In North Carolina, the state rate is, well, the entire tax that comes off is 6.75%. So I pay 4.75% for state and then 2% county tax. So I keep that separate in my records, and I'm going to show you a little glimpse of that, how I do that as well, because I think it will kind of help. So you need to find out for your state what those percentages are and what you're going to owe out every few months, okay? I'll get into all of that more details. So the first thing that you want to do is register an EIN number, which is an employee identification number for your business for a lot of reasons, but also mainly for taxes, because you're going to use that number. That number is going to make you an official business. And the other great thing about being an official business versus a hobby is that with that EIN number, then you can also reach out to wholesalers. You can get your supplies at better discounts. If you want to start reselling or retailing things, you have that option as well. But that's something that you need to do. EIN number, just Google it, it'll take you to your state and you can register, but you need to register with your state, with your EIN number, so that you can get that nice little packet from your state tax people that will tell you exactly how much you need to pay, how much you owe each month. Now, I pay taxes every 3 months when it comes to state, and I will show you how I keep track of that. So let's just hop over to that real quick first. So I like to keep a handwritten record. And here's a little example. I've got it in my book. I don't know how well you guys can see that. But I like to just keep a handwritten record of the date that I've sold something, where I've sold it, how much the retail was, and then my tax percentages. So you'll see where I have the tax percentages on here, the 4.75 and then the 2%. And then down here, I just add like my little, my shipping fees and stuff as well, just for me to personally kind of keep track of them. Now, what this does is at the end of the month, I can then go back and say, okay, I sold this much retail. I'll get to that in a second. This much retail, this much is how much comes out for my 4.75, and this is how much comes out for my 2%. And then when I go to fill out my tax information for that every 3 months, I can just very quickly add that up, send them a check, and I'm done. So when you're in business for yourself, if you're a handmade business, they're going to ask you to pay your taxes every 3 months, quarterly, right? That way you're not behind at the end of the year. It's just easier that way. It's just less stressful than trying to pay it all at once at the end of the year when you maybe don't have it. So there is that. Now, I talked about this before in another video, but just really quickly to discuss what this retail price is. So this isn't actually the price that I take money from people for. That made no sense. So this right here, say it was maybe $100 or something, right? So when I'm selling, I price my products with the tax included. So if I'm selling a necklace for $15, that means that my tax is already included in that $15. Because when I'm selling at a farmer's market or even on Etsy, I find it easier for me at this point just to take the money out. If I'm selling at a craft show, I take the $15 versus saying, oh, the necklace is $14.50 and now I'm going to charge you tax, and then people are pulling change out and it's very awkward and it's just too difficult. So then when I get home at the end of the day, the sales day, I take my $100 total sales, whatever it is, and then I divide it by 1.0675. And then I get how much complete tax comes out of it. I take that out, and then I have my little odd number here, the 93.68 or whatever it is. Hope that made sense. So that's just how I keep track of these things for my own personal records. I think it's good to have a sheet like this just month by month for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's easy for you to separate out your taxes, your tax information, so that at the end of the month you can total things up. You can keep it in your bigger folders that I'm going to show you in just a second. And you can also, you know how much tax you're going to owe at the end of each quarter. And then the other cool thing about this is I always have these written records, and I'm actually transferring them now into a Google Docs. So whatever works for you, I'm going to start using Google Docs as my business grows. It's just easier to keep track of that way. The other thing is that from year to year, you can go back and forth and look and say, oh, I did that show last November. I can't remember how it was. It's all a blur. And you see, okay, I did really terribly at that show last November. I don't know that I'm going to invest the $45 fee again, or whatever it is. Or maybe you say, I did really, really great at these shows both years in a row, so I'm definitely going to do that. So it's a nice reference guide as well. So let's break it down now as far as receipts and everything else. So you've got this, you're keeping track of how much you're selling week to week, month to month, and keeping track of your taxes. And I just keep this really simple file folder system. So I have these little folders, and they have all of them. These are fancy. I got them at Target. But they all have the tabs on top. So let's go one by one what each of them is for. Get my notes out so I don't forget anything. So your monthly totals and receipts. That's my first folder right here. So monthly totals, again, that sheet that I just talked about where I keep track of how much I'm selling throughout the month and how much my taxes are and all that stuff. I total it all up, and I have the sheets printed out or written down, handwritten, and those at the end of the month go into this folder. That way it's really easy to reference. I also use receipt books, you know, carbon copy receipt books when I'm at farmers markets, when I'm at craft shows. If I sell something at home, I write somebody a receipt, even if they don't want it. I have the receipt record for it, the little yellow copy of it, and all of those go in here at the end of the month. And the reason receipts are really good, same thing. You can kind of go back through if there's ever a question about something, you have it on record. Now, I've also seen people, they don't necessarily use the carbon copy receipt books like I do, but they keep track of their sales at events. They'll write things down on a sheet of paper or in a small spiral notebook, just their totals, you know, each sale that they make. Whatever works for you, whatever's easiest. But I think it's really important when you have a business to make sure you're keeping track of all those things so that you can be accountable for it if you need to be accountable for it, that you have the records when tax time rolls around, and they all just go in here. So monthly totals, monthly receipts. Pretty cut and dry, pretty simple. So now the next folder, supplies and materials. So supplies and materials. So your supplies and materials. So this is pretty obviously anytime you purchase materials for your business, stuff that you're going to be using to make the things that you make to sell, those receipts go in here. Your trips to Hobby Lobby, Joann Fabrics, Michaels, anything you order online as far as supplies, tools that you use for your business. If, you know, If you're into jewelry making and you need to buy new pliers or, you know, these little things or whatever, then that would go into this folder as well. Now, a couple of things that I want you to think about this with this is not to forget your details, because it's really easy. Say you sew amazing pillowcases, you do all these pillowcases and you sell those like crazy cakes, okay? Obviously, you're going to remember to put your fabric in here, right? You're buying tons and tons of fabric, you put those receipts in here. But every time you go buy some thread to work on, thread, needles, replacement needles for your sewing machine, right? A sewing machine, if your sewing machine gets hit by a meteor or something, you need to go buy a new sewing machine, your sewing machine goes in here as well. Now be honest with this stuff, you guys, because it's not going to actually help you to kind of cheat and lie and say, oh, I'm just going to go buy a new sewing machine just for kicks and giggles, even though I don't sell anything that I actually sew. So you want to keep it honest, because ultimately you're going to benefit the most. If you use your sewing machine, if you use, you know, woodworking tools, clay, whatever kind of handmade business you're in, those supplies all go in here, all the supplies and materials. And then once you have them all in that folder at the end of the year, you just go through all the receipts, add them up, and you write your totals in there. So the next one is advertising. Now this one is maybe a little less obvious than it seems like. So your advertising folder. So this isn't just advertising like you would think. I'm taking an ad out in the paper, or I'm paying for a Facebook ad or Instagram promotions or whatever. Those do count. So anything you do like that for your business, those receipts would go in there. But the other part of advertising that we don't think about so much are like business cards or signage for your tables. If you buy a banner or a sign for your display, basically, if you think about it this way, anything that has your business name on it that you're using to get people's attention to your business is considered advertising, right? Brochures, so we have like business cards, labels, copies, flyers, if you're making flyers to hang up somewhere for something, banners and signage, Facebook, Instagram, other online ads, and your displays. So this is where it may seem kind of odd. So your table displays. Your tables, any kind of shelving you're putting on your tables, decorative things for your table, all of those kind of things, if you think about it as like you're packaging your business in a pretty way to get people drawn in, that's the advertising budget right there. The other thing is like door prizes go into your advertising budget. Any kind of giveaways, door prizes, and the way to keep track of that, if that's something that you do quite often, just have like a little piece of notebook paper or something and write down the retail amount of what you are selling that item for. So if you're giving away a ceramic mug that normally costs $12, then just write that down as a giveaway, and your tax person will know where to put those numbers when the time comes. Now, office supplies and postage. So office supplies and postage. Even if you don't have an online business, you're probably still using some of these things. Now, obviously, if you're selling online, you're shipping items out. So all of those kind of materials, right? Your bubble wrap, your craft paper, your wrapping paper, your tissue paper, your bubble mailers, obviously the postage, but address labels, fragile stamps, whatever you use, that will go into that folder for postage and office supplies. But the other thing to think about is like stationery and printer ink. So if you are advertising your business, right, this is where it kind of splits a little. If you're advertising your business and you're printing things up from your computer at home, from your printer at home, or even making signs, like I make my own signs and I print stuff all the time for my business and I'm posting things and doing things, you could technically write off your printer ink and your paper as office supplies. Paper clips, receipt pads, the receipt pads I'm talking about, or even notebooks for record keeping. So I have dedicated notebooks. I'll have to do a whole thing on that one day, but like dedicated notebooks, that's like my idea planner strictly for my business. Nothing else goes in there. A little notebook to keep in the car for mileage. All of those kind of things you can write off and put in your office supply and postage folder because you're using them for your business. Don't try to write off your Christmas cards. behave, okay? Don't go buy like 100 stamps for Christmas cards and try to write them off for your business unless they are business Christmas cards or holiday cards, right? And you're promoting your business with it somehow. So be honest. I promise you, you guys, trying to get those little extra things in there is ultimately just going to look negatively against you in the end. So just be honest. But that is your office supplies and postage. Now, fees, that's a pretty obvious one too, for the most part initially, if you're talking about vendor fees, right? So if you do a local farmer's market, a lot of times they have a yearly fee. So you pay your yearly fee to show up whenever you want. Your fees for showing up at events and craft fairs. Now with a lot of these, I've noticed I have to just kind of keep a handwritten record. A lot of times, you know, the smaller events, they're not going to offer you receipts right up, you know, you pay them. It's just a fun thing that a church is doing, or they're doing at a school, or that someone's putting together. So make sure you write down your fees and you're keeping track of that. If you're paying through PayPal or whatever, you can print the receipts up and keep them in here as well. Now, another thing to consider in this folder are like your Etsy seller fees if you're selling through Etsy or another online shop that's taking fees. So you can find all that information at the end of the year, or actually keep track of it month to month, which is what I'm going to be doing this year since my Etsy shop is new. That's something that I'm learning. It's easier to just keep track of it month to month. So you write down how many fees Etsy took that month, keep a record of it on your record sheet. PayPal, the Square reader, the credit card reader, all of those places take little fees, and if you think they don't add up, they do. So every like 10, 15 cents is not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but it does add up. So you want to keep track of that, because by the end of the year, you could have several $100s in fees that you can write off on your taxes. So you want to keep track of that stuff as well. Now, here I combine this folder into two. You can do two separate folders with this one, but it's prize earnings and travel expenses. Now, with prize earnings, the reason that I added this in here is if you do art shows, or, you know, sometimes local places will have little mini gallery get-together kind of things, little mini shows, little mini contests, and you can win prizes. You might win cash, you might win supplies, who knows. If you do things with fabric, like on Spoonflower, I know spoonflower.com has weekly design challenges and prizes where they're always giving away like $200 in free fabric. That's really cool, and sometimes there's other cash prizes. So as a creative person, if you're in contests and you're earning rewards and prizes or free product that you're going to be using toward your business, then you can put that stuff in this folder. So that's something that you want to keep track of as well. Now, as far as the travel and commissions are another thing. Prize earnings, commissions, I kind of put that stuff in here. So the commissions, you might want to keep that a little separate. So if you're selling at a, like say you take your stuff to a shop and they're selling it and they take a certain commission from what you do, then you probably want to keep that in your fees, actually. Scratch that. So you want to keep that in your fees. So if you're doing consignment somewhere and they take like 20, 30, 40% of what you sell, you keep the fees of that in here, in the fees folder. Sorry, got confused. So prize earnings. Now your travel expenses. If your business is in a huge place and you're doing really, really well, maybe you're traveling to like gem shows or something. Maybe you make really fancy gem jewelry and you are traveling to gem shows. Write that stuff off. Write down your travel expenses. Now your travel expenses are your plane ticket or your train ticket. The food that you eat while you're staying overnight somewhere, you can take off at 50%. Everything else, you can just put it in that travel expenses folder. Keep track of it. Your hotel stay, or if you're traveling out of town to do craft fairs and events, right? Keep track of your mileage if you're driving. Keep track of all of your expenses to get there, your expenses while you're there, and put that in your travel folder. Now, on a slightly smaller scale, for most of us that are single parents or businesses aren't quite there yet to go traveling and doing all that fun stuff maybe, you still want to keep track of your mileage in your car on a daily basis. I just keep a little small spiral notebook in my car right where I can see it. So every time I drive to a farmer's market or to a craft show, I write down the mileage. Now the way that you need to do that is right at the beginning of the year, you write down your start mileage. So however many miles your car has on it, you write that down. And then when you are traveling somewhere to an event to sell, or like I'm going to be going tomorrow to pick some things up from a gallery that we're selling there, I write down the beginning mileage that is on my meter on my odometer when I leave the house. And then when I get home, I write down the mileage there, and then I subtract it, or you can click your little button and it gives you, 12.1 miles or whatever, and you write that down. So you traveled a total of 12.1 miles, whatever it is. So whether you're going to a show to sell, or if you've left something somewhere to sell, you write down the mileage of dropping it off, the mileage to pick it up. You can even write down your mileage if you're going to like the craft store to stock up on supplies. You can write that down as well. Just again, be honest with it so that you benefit the most from it. And then at the end of the year, I just add up all of my little mileage totals and put them in that travel expenses folder. Your tax person will know exactly where they need to put the numbers, what will benefit the most for you and your business. And keep in mind, like, tax stuff changes from year to year all the time. So trying to figure out anything beyond that is beyond me. But I know for a fact that this little system keeps me organized throughout the year. I know exactly where my receipts need to go, where my totals need to go, where everything needs to go, and it just makes it so much easier. And then, like I said, the first week in January, my numbers are added up. I see how I've done for the year before, and I'm ready to get started on the new year. So if you guys have any questions, I actually have all of that information in my book, Your Handmade Business, A Guide to Craft Show Success by me, which is on Amazon. So you can find that there if you want some other detailed information too, but that basically covers it for the taxes and kind of organizing your finances. So let me know if maybe there's an extra folder that you keep, or if you have a different kind of system that works for you too. And I hope that that was helpful as we are entering that tax season now. So I wish you guys lots of blessings for the new year for your businesses, and I will see you soon.